My twin sister demanded I introduce my newborn to 3 different family groups before her wedding, which was scheduled just 2 weeks after my due date. When I refused to parade my baby around like some kind of pre-wedding entertainment, she accused me of being selfish. My name is Hannah, and I'm 28 years old. Growing up as twins, Natalie and I were inseparable. We shared everything: clothes, secrets, dreams about our future families. We always imagined our kids would grow up together, practically siblings themselves. Natalie and I had always been more than sisters. We were best friends, confidants, and each other's biggest supporters. Born just 3 minutes apart, we'd spent our entire lives finishing each other's sentences and knowing exactly what the other was thinking. In high school, we'd switch places for tests we weren't prepared for. In college, we'd cover for each other during late nights and bad decisions. When we both moved to different states after graduation, we'd still talk every single day, sometimes for hours. Our mother used to joke that we had some kind of twin telepathy because we'd call each other at the exact same moment, or show up wearing identical outfits without planning it. Natalie was the more outgoing one, always the life of the party, while I was quieter, more thoughtful. But together, we were unstoppable. We'd dreamed of having kids around the same time, being pregnant together, raising our children as cousins who were more like siblings. When Natalie started dating Kevin 3 years ago, I was genuinely happy for her. He seemed like a good guy, stable, kind, and he made her laugh in ways I hadn't seen in years. Around the same time, I met my husband Ryan at a coffee shop downtown. He was reading the same book I'd just finished, and we ended up talking for 3 hours about everything and nothing. Natalie was my maid of honor when Ryan and I got married 2 years ago, and I always assumed I'd return the favor when her time came. Everything changed last spring. Natalie had been trying to get pregnant for about 6 months, and when she finally got that positive test, she was over the moon. She called me at 6 in the morning, crying happy tears, talking about how our kids were going to be born just months apart. I was so excited for her, for us, for the future we'd always dreamed about. But then, at 8 weeks, she lost the baby. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was at work. Her voice was hollow, broken in a way I'd never heard before. She'd started bleeding that morning and went to the doctor, but there was nothing they could do. The pregnancy was over. I drove 4 hours to be with her that night. I held her while she cried, brought her ice cream and tissues, and stayed the entire weekend. We didn't talk much, but I thought just being there was enough. Natalie had always been the strong one between us, the one who bounced back from everything. I figured she'd grieve for a while and then things would go back to normal. I was wrong. 3 months later, when Ryan and I found out we were expecting, I was terrified to tell Natalie. We'd been trying for over a year, and this pregnancy had come as a complete surprise. I knew the timing was terrible, that it would hurt her, but I also knew I couldn't hide it forever. I called her on a Saturday morning, my hands shaking as I dialed her number. "Natalie," I started, my voice barely above a whisper, "I have something to tell you, and I don't know how to say it." There was silence on the other end, and then she said, "You're pregnant." It wasn't a question. Somehow, she just knew. "Yes," I whispered. "I'm so sorry. I know the timing is awful, and congratulations," she said, but her voice was flat, emotionless. "I have to go." The line went dead. That was the beginning of the end of our relationship as I knew it. Natalie didn't return my calls for 2 weeks. When she finally did, she was polite but distant, like she was talking to an acquaintance rather than her twin sister. At family gatherings, she'd barely acknowledge me. If anyone brought up my pregnancy, she'd suddenly need to use the bathroom or step outside for air. I understood her pain, or at least I thought I did. I tried to give her space while also being there for her. I'd text her occasionally, not about the baby, just normal sister stuff. Sometimes she'd respond with one-word answers. Most times, she wouldn't respond at all. Mom kept telling me that Natalie just needed time, that losing a baby changes you in ways that are hard to understand unless you've been through it. "She's not angry at you, honey," Mom would say. "She's just hurting." But it felt like anger to me. It felt like I was being punished for something I couldn't control. By my second trimester, Natalie had started dating again. She'd met someone named Connor at her gym, and according to Mom, things were moving fast. I was happy for her, genuinely, even though it stung that I was learning about her new relationship through our mother instead of directly from her. Then, in my 7th month, Natalie called me out of the blue. It was the first time she'd initiated contact since I'd told her about my pregnancy. "Hannah," she said, and I could hear excitement in her voice for the first time in months. "I'm pregnant again." My heart did a weird combination of soaring and sinking at the same time. I was thrilled for her, but also confused and hurt by the timing of her call. "Natalie, that's amazing," I said, trying to match her energy. How far along are you? 12 weeks, she said. We just told Connor's family yesterday. 12 weeks. She'd known for at least a month, maybe longer, and this was the first I was hearing about it. Meanwhile, I'd called her the moment I'd found out about my own pregnancy, terrified of hurting her feelings. We're getting married, she continued, barely pausing for breath. Connor proposed last night, and we want to have the wedding before the baby comes. We're thinking early November. My due date was October 15th. Early November would be just weeks after I gave birth. That's wonderful, Natalie, I managed to say. I'm so happy for you. I want you to be my maid of honor, she said, and for a moment, it felt like we were back to being the sisters we used to be. Of course, I said without hesitation. I'd love to. There's just one thing, she said, and something in her tone made my stomach clench. If you bring the baby to the wedding, I need everyone in the family to have met him or her first. I don't want the wedding to become about your baby, you know? I want the focus to stay on me and Connor. I sat there in stunned silence, processing what she just said. She wanted me to parade my newborn around to various family members in the weeks following the birth, like some kind of introduction tour, just so the baby could attend her wedding. Natalie, I said slowly, my due date is October 15th. If the baby comes on time, they'll only be 2 or 3 weeks old by your wedding. And you want me to take them to meet, who exactly? Well, Aunt Stephanie and Uncle Robert, obviously. And Grandma Eleanor. And Connor's parents will want to meet their new stepniece or nephew. It's not that big of a deal, Hannah. Just a few quick visits. A few quick visits with a newborn who would barely be old enough to leave the house. A baby who would need to eat every 2 hours and sleep most of the day. Not to mention that I'd just given birth and would still be recovering, both physically and emotionally. What if the baby comes late? I asked. What if I have a C-section and need more recovery time? What if, Hannah, Natalie interrupted, it's one day. One important day for me. You've had this whole pregnancy to be the center of attention. Can't you just do this one thing for your sister? The center of attention. As if I'd asked for any of this attention, as if I hadn't spent months walking on eggshells around her, trying to minimize my own joy so she wouldn't feel worse about her loss. I need to think about it, I said. Think about it? Her voice rose. Hannah, it's my wedding. I'm asking you to be my maid of honor and to make sure your baby doesn't overshadow the most important day of my life. This shouldn't require thinking about. But it did require thinking about. A lot of thinking. That night, I talked to Ryan about the conversation. He listened quietly while I explained Natalie's request, and when I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. She wants our newborn to complete a social tour before being allowed at her wedding, he finally said. It's not exactly, Hannah, Ryan interrupted gently, that's exactly what it is. She's treating our baby like they need to earn their place at a family event. What kind of message does that send? I wanted to defend Natalie, to explain that she was still grieving, that she was just trying to protect her special day. But the more I thought about it, the more Ryan's words rang true. Maybe I could just go without the baby, I suggested. Leave them with your mom or, 2 weeks after giving birth? Ryan shook his head. Honey, you don't know how you're going to feel. You don't know if you'll be breastfeeding, if you'll have had complications, if the baby will even be here by then. And even if everything goes perfectly, do you really want to be away from our newborn for an entire day and evening? He was right, of course. I'd been so focused on trying to make Natalie happy that I hadn't really considered what would be best for me, for Ryan, or for our baby. The next few weeks were torture. Natalie called several times to discuss wedding details, always ending the conversation with some version of, so you'll make sure everyone meets the baby first, right? Each time, I'd give some non-committal response about seeing how things went. Meanwhile, my family started weighing in with their own opinions. Mom called to tell me how excited she was about the wedding and how sweet it was that Natalie wanted the baby to be part of it. 2 weeks is plenty of time to recover, Mom said. I was back to normal activities within days of having you girls. But Mom, I tried to explain, Natalie wants me to take the baby to meet everyone beforehand. That's multiple trips with a newborn who'll be barely 2 weeks old. Oh, honey, that's just Natalie being considerate. She knows how much attention a new baby gets, and she wants to make sure her wedding doesn't get overshadowed. It's actually quite thoughtful when you think about it. Thoughtful. That was one way to look at it. My mother-in-law, Sharon, had a different perspective. When I explained the situation to her over lunch, she nearly choked on her sandwich. She wants you to do what now? Sharon asked, her eyes wide. Take the baby to meet everyone before the wedding. Just quick visits, Natalie said. Sharon set down her sandwich and leaned forward. Hannah, honey, I've had 3 children. 2 weeks after giving birth, you're going to be exhausted, emotional, and still healing. The idea of loading up a newborn and driving around town for social visits sounds like a nightmare. But it's Natalie's wedding, I said weakly. And it's your baby and your recovery, Sharon replied firmly. Any reasonable person would understand that a 2-week-old baby doesn't need to earn their way into family events. The conversation that changed everything happened 3 weeks before my due date. I'd gone to Natalie's apartment to help her address wedding invitations, hoping that spending time together might help us work through this issue. We sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by cream-colored envelopes and calligraphy pens. For the first hour, things felt almost normal between us. We talked about flowers and music and how nervous she was about walking down the aisle. I felt hopeful that maybe we could get back to being the sisters we used to be. Then she brought up the baby situation again. So I've been thinking, Natalie said, not looking up from the invitation she was addressing, maybe we should schedule the visits in advance. That way, everyone knows when to expect you and the baby. I set down my pen. Natalie, I've been thinking about this too, and I'm not sure it's realistic. What if the baby comes late? What if there are complications? What if I'm not up for multiple outings so soon after giving birth? She looked up at me then, and I saw a flash of something in her eyes, anger, maybe, or frustration. Hannah, she said slowly, I lost a baby. I know what it's like to have your plans fall apart. But I'm not asking you to climb a mountain here. I'm asking you to make a few short visits so that my wedding doesn't become all about your baby. It's not going to be all about my baby, I protested. It's your day, Natalie. Everyone knows that. Do they? She asked. Because let me tell you what's going to happen if you show up with a brand new baby that no one has met yet. Aunt Stephanie is going to spend the entire cocktail hour holding your baby instead of congratulating me. Grandma Eleanor is going to want to sit with you during the ceremony so she can peek at the baby. Everyone's going to be asking to hold your little one during my reception instead of dancing and celebrating with me and Connor. I stared at her, trying to understand how we'd gotten to this point. When had my sister, my twin, my best friend, started seeing my baby as competition instead of a blessing to our family? Natalie, I said quietly, this baby is your niece or nephew. They're family. They're not some stranger trying to upstage your wedding. That's not the point, she snapped. The point is that I've had to watch you get everything I wanted while I dealt with loss and grief. I've had to smile and nod while everyone in our family talked about your pregnancy, your nursery, your baby shower. I've been nothing but supportive, and now I'm asking for one thing, to make sure my wedding day is actually about me. Supportive. That word hit me like a slap. Natalie thought she'd been supportive during my pregnancy. The months of ignored phone calls, the awkward family gatherings where she'd leave the room if anyone mentioned the baby, the complete absence from my baby shower, that was her version of support. You've been supportive? I repeated, unable to keep the disbelief out of my voice. Yes, I have, she said defiantly. I could have made things much harder for you. I could have told everyone how difficult this has been for me, how insensitive it was for you to get pregnant right after my miscarriage. But I didn't. I kept my feelings to myself and let you have your moment. I felt like she'd punched me in the stomach. Natalie, I didn't get pregnant at you. It wasn't some calculated decision to hurt you or steal your thunder. Ryan and I had been trying for over a year before, I know that, she interrupted. But it still hurt. And I still dealt with it quietly so you could be happy. So now I'm asking you to do the same for me. We sat there in silence for a moment, the half-addressed wedding invitations scattered between us like the remnants of our relationship. What if I can't do it? I asked finally. What if the baby comes late, or I have complications, or I'm just not ready to be running around town 2 weeks postpartum? Natalie's expression hardened. Then I guess you'll have to choose between being my maid of honor and bringing your baby to my wedding. The ultimatum hung in the air between us. After 28 years of being each other's person, Natalie was asking me to choose between her and my child. Natalie, no, Hannah. I'm done compromising. I'm done putting your needs ahead of my own happiness. This is my wedding, and I get to set the terms. If that's too much to ask of my own sister, then maybe we're not as close as I thought we were. I left her apartment that day with a heavy heart and a head full of doubts. Was I being unreasonable? Was Natalie right that I'd been insensitive? Had I really been as supportive as I thought I'd been during her miscarriage? That night, Ryan found me sitting in the nursery we'd spent months preparing, staring at the empty crib and trying to make sense of everything. How'd it go with Natalie? He asked, settling into the rocking chair beside me. I told him about the conversation, about the ultimatum, about the choice I was apparently being forced to make. When I finished, Ryan was quiet for a long time. You know what I think, he finally said. I think Natalie is in pain, and she's letting that pain make her cruel. But that doesn't mean you have to accept her cruelty. She's my twin sister, I said weakly. We've been through everything together. And now she's asking you to put her wants ahead of your baby's needs and your own recovery. That's not something a loving sister would ask. The more I thought about it over the following days, the more I realized Ryan was right. Natalie wasn't asking me to make a small sacrifice for her happiness. She was asking me to prioritize her emotional comfort over my physical recovery and my baby's well-being. She was asking me to treat my child like a burden that needed to earn its place in our family. 2 weeks before my due date, I called Natalie. My hands were shaking again, just like they had been when I'd called to tell her about my pregnancy, but this time it was with resolve rather than fear. "Hey," she answered on the second ring. "Please tell me you're calling to confirm the visiting schedule." "Actually," I said, taking a deep breath, "I'm calling to tell you that I won't be able to be your maid of honor." There was silence on the other end of the line. "I'm still planning to come to your wedding if I'm physically able," I continued, "but I won't be putting my newborn through multiple social visits just to earn the right to attend. If having my baby at your wedding is going to be such a problem for you, then maybe it's better if we don't come at all." "Hannah," Natalie said, and her voice was cold, "are you seriously choosing your baby over me?" "I'm choosing what's best for my family," I replied. "Just like you're choosing what's best for yours." "Fine," she said. "Don't come. Don't be my maid of honor. Don't bring your precious baby. I'll have a perfect wedding without you." "Natalie," but the line had already gone dead. My baby, a beautiful little girl named Lily Rose, was born on October 18th, 3 days after my due date. The labor was long and difficult, ending in an emergency C-section after 18 hours of trying to deliver naturally. Ryan and I spent the first week of Lily's life in a haze of exhaustion, learning how to feed her, change her, and function on 2 hours of sleep at a time. The idea of loading her up for multiple family visits during those early days seemed completely absurd. I could barely manage a shower, let alone coordinate social calls with a newborn who ate every hour and cried whenever she wasn't sleeping or eating. Natalie's wedding was beautiful, or so I heard from Mom, who called me the day after to fill me in on all the details. Natalie had looked stunning in her dress, Connor had cried during his vows, and the reception had gone on until midnight. "She asked about you," Mom said carefully. "Several times, actually. I think she was hoping you'd change your mind at the last minute." "How did she seem?" I asked, even though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. "Happy, but I don't know. Something felt off. Like she was trying too hard to prove how perfect everything was." "And Hannah, honey, I have to tell you, I talked to Aunt Stephanie at the reception, and she had no idea about Natalie's visiting requirement. When I mentioned it, she was horrified. She said she would never expect a new mother to parade her baby around just to attend a family event. So it wasn't even something the family members wanted. It was just Natalie's way of making things as difficult as possible for me. 3 months passed without any contact between us. I sent Natalie a birth announcement with Lily's picture, but I never heard back. I texted her a few times, sending photos of Lily reaching milestones, her first smile, the first time she slept through the night, her first laugh. No response. The silence was deafening. For the first time in our lives, Natalie and I weren't sharing the big moments, the small victories, the daily struggles that make up a life. I'd look at Lily sometimes and think about how Natalie was missing out on watching her niece grow up, and it broke my heart all over again. The breaking point came during Christmas. Our family always gathered at Mom and Dad's house for Christmas Eve dinner, and this year would be Lily's first Christmas. I'd been looking forward to it for weeks, imagining all our relatives meeting my daughter, seeing her in the little red dress I'd bought specifically for the occasion. But when we arrived, Natalie and Connor were already there, and the tension in the room was immediate and obvious. Natalie barely looked at me when we walked in, and she didn't acknowledge Lily at all. Not a glance, not a comment, nothing. Everyone else, however, was completely enchanted with Lily. Aunt Stephanie, who supposedly needed to meet her before the wedding, spent 20 minutes just staring at her tiny fingers. Grandma Eleanor held her for most of the evening, crying happy tears and telling anyone who would listen that Lily looked exactly like Natalie and I had as babies. "She's absolutely perfect," Uncle Robert said, gently touching Lily's cheek. "You must be so proud, Hannah." I was proud, and I was happy to see my family falling in love with my daughter. But I was also acutely aware of Natalie sitting in the corner, pointedly ignoring the baby who was supposedly going to ruin her wedding day with all the attention she'd receive. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here we were, 3 months after Natalie's wedding, and Lily was indeed getting a lot of attention from our family. But it wasn't the disruptive, wedding-ruining kind of attention Natalie had feared. It was the natural, joyful attention that comes with welcoming a new family member. The kind of attention that should have been celebrated, not feared. Halfway through dinner, I excused myself to feed Lily in the quiet of my childhood bedroom. I was sitting in the rocking chair Dad had built for Mom when Natalie and I were babies, nursing my daughter and listening to the sounds of family celebration downstairs, when Natalie appeared in the doorway. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. I nodded, adjusting Lily in my arms. Natalie came into the room and sat on the edge of my old bed. For a moment, we just looked at each other, and I could see in her face the sister I'd grown up with, the one who'd been my best friend for so many years. "I'm sorry," she said finally, and her voice was barely above a whisper. I felt tears spring to my eyes. "Natalie, no, let me say this," she interrupted. "I've been horrible to you. I've been selfish and cruel, and I've let my grief turn me into someone I don't recognize. You didn't deserve any of it. You were hurting," I said. "I understood." "No, you didn't understand," she said, shaking her head. "And that's not your fault. I never explained what I was going through. I never told you how seeing you pregnant felt like a constant reminder of what I'd lost. I never told you how much it hurt to watch you get everything I wanted so badly." Lily finished eating and I lifted her to my shoulder, gently patting her back. "But that wasn't your fault," Natalie continued. "You didn't get pregnant to hurt me. You didn't have Lily to spite me. You just lived your life and followed your dreams, the same dreams we used to share. And instead of being happy for you, instead of supporting you the way a sister should, I punished you for having what I couldn't have." "The wedding?" I started to say. "The wedding requirements were ridiculous," Natalie said firmly. "I knew they were ridiculous when I made them. I was angry and hurt, and I wanted to make things as difficult for you as possible. I wanted you to choose between me and your baby because I was so tired of feeling like I was losing to everyone else." She looked at Lily, sleeping peacefully against my shoulder, and her expression softened. "She's beautiful, Hannah. She's absolutely perfect. Would you like to hold her?" I asked. Natalie's eyes filled with tears. "Could I?" I carefully transferred Lily to her aunt's arms, watching as Natalie looked down at my daughter with wonder and love. "Hi, sweet girl," Natalie whispered. "I'm your Aunt Natalie. I'm sorry it took me so long to meet you properly." Lily stirred slightly in her sleep, and Natalie's face broke into the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in months. "I'm pregnant again," Natalie said suddenly, still looking down at Lily. "What?" I asked, sitting forward. 14 weeks. We found out right after the wedding." She looked up at me. "I wanted to tell you, but I didn't know how. I didn't know if you'd even want to hear from me after everything that happened." "Of course I want to hear from you," I said. "Natalie, you're my sister. I've missed you so much." "I've missed you too," she said, and now the tears were flowing freely. "I've missed everything. I missed Lily's birth, her first months, her first Christmas. I've missed being your sister, and I don't know how to fix it." "You start by forgiving yourself," I said. "And then we figure out how to move forward together." We talked for another hour, sitting in that childhood bedroom where we'd shared so many secrets and dreams over the years. Natalie told me about her pregnancy, about how terrified she was of losing this baby too, about how Connor had been trying to get her to reconcile with me since the wedding. I told her about Lily's birth, about the scary moments during the C-section, about how incredible it felt to become a mother. I told her about how much I'd wanted to call her during those early weeks when everything felt overwhelming and new. "Our kids are going to be cousins," Natalie said, gently rocking Lily in her arms. "Just like we always planned," I agreed. "They're going to grow up together, aren't they? Like we did?" "I hope so," I said. "I really hope so." When we finally went back downstairs, the rest of the family immediately noticed the change between us. Mom started crying the moment she saw Natalie holding Lily, and Dad, who never shows emotion, had to excuse himself to check on something in the garage. The rest of the evening felt like a celebration of more than just Christmas. It felt like a celebration of family, of forgiveness, of second chances and new beginnings. Natalie's son, James Connor, was born in May, just as spring was turning to summer. I was there for the birth, holding her hand through the contractions and crying when she cried during her first moments with her baby. This time, there were no conditions, no requirements, no hoops to jump through. There was just love and joy and the pure happiness that comes with welcoming a new life into the world. Our children, Lily and James, are now inseparable. At family gatherings, they're always together, sharing toys and getting into trouble in the way that only cousins can. They're growing up with the kind of bond Natalie and I had, the kind we almost lost but managed to find again. Looking back now, I understand that grief can make people do terrible things. It can twist love into fear, joy into resentment, and family bonds into battlegrounds. Natalie's miscarriage didn't just cost her a baby, it almost cost her our relationship, and it could have cost our children the chance to grow up as close as we did. But I also understand that boundaries matter, even with family. Especially with family. When someone's pain starts hurting the people around them, it's okay to say no. It's okay to choose what's best for your own family, even if it means disappointing someone you love. The wedding I didn't attend turned out to be just one day. But the relationship I fought to preserve, the boundaries I learned to set, and the forgiveness we both chose to give, those are the things that last. Those are the things that matter. Today, when I watch Lily and James playing together, I see the future Natalie and I always dreamed of. Our kids are growing up as best friends, just like we did. The difference is, they're growing up with parents who learn the hard way that love sometimes means letting go, that forgiveness is a choice you make every day, and that family is worth fighting for, even when the fight is with family itself. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd given in to Natalie's demands, if I'd paraded Lily around to earn her place at that wedding. I think I would have set a precedent that my child's worth was conditional, that family love came with requirements and conditions. I think I would have taught my daughter that sometimes you have to diminish yourself to make others comfortable. Instead, I taught her something else entirely. I taught her that she was valuable just as she was, that her place in our family was secure and unconditional, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say no to someone you love when their requests would cause harm. The woman who once demanded her niece earn the right to attend a family wedding is now the aunt who shows up at every birthday party, every school play, every little league game. She's the one Lily runs to when she needs someone to paint her nails or teach her how to braid her hair. She's the aunt who spoils her just enough to make her parents nervous, and who loves her exactly as much as she should have from the very first day. That's the thing about forgiveness, it doesn't erase the past, but it can transform the future. Natalie and I will never get back those months we lost, but we've built something new from the ashes of what we almost destroyed. We've built a relationship based on honesty instead of assumption, on boundaries instead of blind obligation, and on the kind of love that's strong enough to survive its own mistakes. Our story didn't end with a wedding. It didn't end with an ultimatum or a severed relationship or two sisters who chose pride over love. It ended with two women who learned that being family doesn't mean never hurting each other, it means choosing to heal together when the hurting is done.